Welcome back, everybody. Matt the Matt here. Hope you're doing well. So this week, we've heard that Amazon MGM are starting to look at directors for the new James Bond movie. As we know that Amazon picked up the rights to James Bond, I want to say earlier this year or last year. I don't know, time flies. And now it's weird to think that this November will already be 4 years since the last Daniel Craig James Bond movie, No Time to Die. 4 years already? Wow. And at least for now, there's not a James Bond movie coming out next year. I would say it probably won't be until at least 2027 till we might see a new movie. A reboot of the James Bond franchise under Amazon. But they are looking at directors right now. One of the directors that they were starting to look at was Alfonso Cuarón. Now there's some reports that say he's not on the table anymore. Some news outlets say no, they're still talking to him. Is that a completely finalized no-go? So, and let me just say about Alfonso. Alfonso's a great director. I mean, you look at Children of Men, you look at Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which almost a lot of people say is the best Harry Potter film in the franchise. He really took what Chris Columbus did with the first two Harry Potter films and made it darker, made it more focused on just Harry, brought a lot more atmosphere and tone in that third one. The cinematography is still one of the best shot Harry Potter movies in the entire franchise. He really took Harry Potter in a new direction. A more adult tone, darker tone, brought atmosphere to it. One of the best shot movies in the franchise. I mean, he did a lot with that Harry Potter film. And this is a director that was more known for smaller films, like A Little Princess. I forgot to mention that movie. I used to watch that when I was in the 90s, when I was a kid. I know what you're thinking. Hey, it was one of those movies, like The Secret Garden. They were almost like the same movie. Little girl, orphan, gets sent to like a boarding school for girls. The person in charge is not a nice person. And, this and that. One of them had Maggie Smith in it. Anyway, getting to the point. And then he did like Children of Men. Then he did the movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock. And I know he's done something else or two, it just hasn't been as... But he is a director that, A, doesn't do that much. So when he does something, you pay attention. And B, all his movies are pretty much great. So, for him, I think it would be... Him doing a Bond movie would be the most interesting out of all the directors they have on the list. And we've seen he can do a big blockbuster franchise like Harry Potter. And since he's rebooting the new Bond with this next movie, he'll be able to do it how he wants without any, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that. He'll be able to do whatever he wants. I think it will end up being the most artsy Bond movie. But the only problem I do have with Alfonso Cuarón is he reminds me of Mark Forrester, who did the second Daniel Craig movie, Quantum of Solace. A director that was more known for dramas, independent films, not action. You look at like The Kite Runner. You look at like Finding Neverland. That doesn't scream James Bond. That screams a small independent filmmaker who likes to do dramas. Not James Bond. And I feel like with Alfonso Cuarón, yes, he did Harry Potter, but there wasn't that much action in the third Harry Potter film. I feel like he'll bring the same feel that Mark Forrester brought to Cuarón's film. I think the film will be immensely better, because Alfonso is a better director, and I think it'll be very, very character-driven. But I don't think it will be on the level of an action movie that we also want to see in a Bond movie. Well, like I said, if they end up going with Alfonso Cuarón officially, I'll be right there on day one. One of the directors is Edward Berger. Edward Berger, the Burgermeister. Edward Berger is known for the Netflix film All Quiet on the Western Front, the remake that came out, I think like 2 years ago. That's a great movie. It's a great war movie. Great cinematography in that film. I think him as a director, for what he did with that war movie, I can see him bringing that tone and feel to James Bond action, darker, gritty, violent movie. Also, he just came off of Conclave with Ray Fiennes. Excellent movie up until the end. That movie still had great acting, great cinematography, great editing, great pace to it. The score. The only thing I didn't like was the ending of that film. Funny enough, that movie had Ray Fiennes, who has been recently in the Bond movies with Daniel Craig. And it would be very interesting if they did bring this director on, if he would try to be like, can we bring back Ray Fiennes as M? I'd be okay for it. I mean, like I said, I think he would be an interesting director, but he's still not like that. He's not an Alfonso Cuarón, and he's definitely not some of these other names. So he's actually probably the lowest on here in terms of recognizability. We got Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve, the guy who brought us Sicario, the guy who brought us Arrival, the guy who brought us Blade Runner 2049, the guy who brought us Prisoners. Why did I say Prisoners first? That's the movie that made me know him. Prisoners. The guy who brought us Dune. The guy who brought us Dune Part 2. And the guy who's working on Dune Messiah right now. This is one of my favorite new directors in Hollywood. I think ever since Prisoners. And he had Enemy, and then Sicario, and then Arrival, and then Blade Runner 2049. I mean, he's a great director. And obviously with like Dune and Blade Runner, he can do action. He can do character-driven movies like Prisoners, Enemy, Arrival. He's one of the best of the best right now. He could easily do a Bond movie. But I don't want him to do a Bond movie. He's one of your favorite directors right now, and you don't want him to do a Bond movie? If you look at all the movies I have mentioned, Sicario, Prisoners, Arrival, Dune, Blade Runner, those are all very dark movies. And I'm not talking about cinematography. I'm talking about the story, the tones, the atmosphere of all those. Very dark, character-driven movies. None of that says James Bond. James Bond, yes. Someone like Casino Royale have a little darker tone to them, you know. But if you watch any of Denis Villeneuve movies, there's no humor in those movies. There might be barely a smirk. But there is no humor. There is no levity in really any of those movies. You put him in a Bond, to do a Bond movie, you're going to get a very dark, dark story, tone, character, And I think a lot of people will not want to see that. It will look great, it will sound great, I mean the acting will be great, but I think in terms of story and tone, atmosphere, you're going to get a very, very dark James Bond movie. And if I was Amazon, that is not what I would want the first movie in your new reboot, and also getting the rights to the franchise to start out in. I love Denis Villeneuve, but sorry my boy, Bond is not for you. Then we got Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright is obviously known for a lot of things: Hot Fuzz, The World's End, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Baby Driver. He just finished the Running Man remake with Glenn Powell. He was supposed to do that first Ant-Man movie, but because Marvel took so long to make that movie, to get it into production, he had to step away, even though he still wrote the script, and a lot of his ideas were still in the finished film. I think this would be the most interesting director. If you look at a lot of his movies like Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, The World's End, Baby Driver, which is actually my favorite of his. He's a very interesting director. And I think he would handle the action. It would definitely be a lot different from a Denis Villeneuve Bond movie. A lot more levity, a lot more, humor. Almost more like the Roger Moore movies of Bond. I think he would be an interesting pick. And apparently he loves James Bond. So, if they send him tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, this is going to be a very interesting Bond movie. I can't wait to check it out. Jonathan Nolan is on the list. Jonathan Nolan is the brother not from another mother, the same mother, of Christopher Nolan. Jonathan Nolan's been around for a while. He's done a lot of TV shows like Westworld. He just finished that first season of Fallout, which was really good. He's helped his brother, Christopher, on a lot of scripts, like The Dark Knight, like The Dark Knight Rises. He was the one that said we need to bring in Catwoman. Thank you. That's why we got Anne Hathaway. He's worked on The Prestige. He's worked on a lot of the Nolan movies, either as a screenwriter, helped as a producer. I think he's only directed one movie. No, he hasn't directed a movie. That was a cinematographer. The only reason I would be hesitant for a Jonathan Nolan Bond movie is if he really hasn't directed anything. He might have directed an episode or two of Westworld and maybe a Fallout, but he still hasn't hit a major feature film. And to take on the Bond franchise, I'd be a little worried. The other director is Paul King, who's known for the Paddington movies and the recent Willy Wonka movie with Timothée Chalamet. I think the Wonka movie was very good, very special movie. Paddington, people love it. I don't see James Bond when I watch Paddington or Wonka. Those are children, family-friendly movies. Now, I'm not saying he can't do it. Like I said, look at Alfonso. Look at Alfonso Cuarón. He did A Little Princess. That does not scream James Bond. That doesn't even scream Harry Potter. But hey, look what he did. But when you say Paul King, the guy who did Paddington, you don't go James Bond. Yeah. The man, the myth, the legend. You know him. I know him. I have one of his movies up here. Like I had a Denis Villeneuve movie and an Edgar Wright movie. Now we got another movie. That's right. Christopher, the brother of Jonathan Nolan. Christopher Nolan. He's still in the running. And people, And you might say, oh, of course, Christopher Nolan, Batman, duh. No, 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 no. No! You go back and you watch Inception. Go back and watch Inception. Go back and watch Tenet. There is so much Bond-isms in those movies, whether it's the third act of Inception with the final stage and the snowplow and snow skiing, that all feels like a James Bond sequence. You go to Tenet with the gadgets and the traveling all over the world, and Kenneth Branagh is almost like a James Bond villain, has his own island, has his own yacht. Very much felt like a Bond movie, and the gadgets. And even if you look at the Batman movies, Bruce Wayne is a little bit of a Bond feel with the gadgets. And he has his, Lucius Fox, Morgan Freeman is like Q. Alfred is like M, reporting to Alfred. There's a lot, the gadgets. There's even a lot of the cars. You got the tumbler. You got the motorcycle tumbler thingy-majigger. The Lamborghini end. The Lamborghini end. Much more subtle. I mean, and Christopher Nolan loves James Bond. He said countless, that's his favorite franchise ever. James Bond. That's why you see so much of James Bond influence in a lot of his movies. He can do the action. He can get that actor to be James Bond and it will be, the cinematography, the score. The only thing that hesitates me when it would be a character-driven movie like a lot of his movies. I mean, you would have all of it. But there's just one thing that worries me. If you watch any Christopher Nolan movie, any, there is no romance in any of his films. The one movie that you get some romance is with Katie Holmes and Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins. And a little bit with Leonardo DiCaprio and Marion Cotillard in Inception. When they're all the way down in the last stage, and then we see their life throughout that time. That's it. He's not a romantic. And not that I'm saying Bond is this romantic person. No, he's a dinosaur, as they say. He just goes after the hottest woman and wants to sleep with them. That's what he's known for, getting the girl in the bed. And when you look at Casino Royale, and there is romance with Bond and Vespa Lynn. So now that they're rebooting Bond, you might want to start out with a movie where Bond is in a romantic relationship. And if you bring in someone like a Christopher Nolan, I would be very worried about that because he does not do romance. He's married, he has a partner, he's been married for a long time, but for some reason, that does not translate into his movies at all. So, and I think you don't see sex scenes in his movies. So, the one time, I remember in the rated PG-13 sexual content for The Dark Knight Rises, and all that was Bruce Wayne and Marion Cotillard, Talia al Ghul, Miranda Tate, just laying in bed together, not making out, not doing anything, not even kissing, just laying in bed. And that was sexual content. Huh? I lay in my bed every night. I ain't getting any. I mean, the point of the matter is, Bond likes to sleep with women. Bond can sometimes be a romantic. Nolan has none of that. So that would be like my one worry, my one. And you might say, we don't go see Bond movies for sex scenes or whatever. No, but even if you look at a lot of Christopher Nolan's movies, the one criticism that I think a lot of people would agree with is a lot of the female characters don't get enough attention like the male characters. I think that's a pretty perfect observation on all of Nolan movies. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Inception, Interstellar, Tenet, Oppenheimer, even Oppenheimer. You had Florence Pugh, and you barely did anything with her in there. Even Emily Blunt, we get to know her, and then we barely get to know her in the beginning of that film. It's not until the third act, when she's being questioned, do we finally get some real Emily Blunt. And like I think you just look at, like Dunkirk, no women. No women Dunkirk. Insomnia, yeah, you get Hilary Swank. But once again, we're more focused on the Al Pacino and the Robin Williams. Memento. Guys, here, yes, you get Carrie-Anne Moss. That might be the only time in that whole movie, in the whole Nolan movies, that you get actually a substantial character. Even in The Prestige, we don't get much of Rebecca Hall. We get just enough to feel for her. And the Scarlett Johansson is just Scarlett Johansson. Hottie with a body. Right here. Here you go. So that's what I would be very worried about. If he doesn't, and like I think, even going back to Interstellar, they do a great job with the female Murph when she's younger. But then when we get to the older Murph, Jessica Chastain, I feel like the character just went down. And why Casino Royale is to me one of the best Bond movies, and because that you really develop the Vespa Lynn character of Eva Green while still having Bond be Bond, and you still show that romance. And it worked. That's why a lot of people think Eva Green's Vespa Lynn is the best Bond girl in the entire franchise. And a lot of people think Casino Royale is one of the best Bond movies ever, because it not only had the action and Bond being James Bond, but we also saw some of that romance, some of that betrayal. But it all worked. And I fear that Christopher Nolan, that is one of his major criticisms, is his female characters. That could be a detriment in a Bond movie. Maybe a Bond movie that you're rebooting a franchise. You don't want to start off and people criticize, oh, the female Bond, horrible. Oh, there was not even a little bit of romance. Not even any Bond in the bed with a girl, like in most Bond movies. You know what I mean? Even in Die Another Day, which a lot of people don't like, that ending with Halle Berry and Pierce Brosnan in the bedroom, and the dialogue, oh, leave it in, just a little bit more. You're thinking, oh, they're doing the dirty, but they're the little fucking diamonds in her belly button. But it's still like, you get that sexual, romance, that sexual feeling and dialogue. And I have never seen that in a Nolan movie. And that would be my number one criticism of hiring Christopher Nolan. Everything else will be perfect. I'd be curious who he picked to be James Bond. Does he go with Cillian Murphy or Tom Hardy? Because those two people are going to be on that list, no matter what. He's worked with both of them a number of times. And let me tell you something, people. If Michael Caine was still acting, mark my fucking words. If Christopher Nolan was directing a Bond movie, Michael Caine would be either M or Q. You know it, I know it. That would be a done deal. But let me know in the comments below. Do any of these directors spark your fancy of taking over the Bond franchise? Alfonso, Paul, Edgar, Denise, Jonathan, Christopher. Let me know in the comments below. Matt in the Matt here. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment.